Good evening and welcome to the Marcella Central School District Board of Education meeting for this evening, Monday, May 18th, 2020. This time I would ask that you please join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item 3 on the agenda, 3.1 presentation. Mrs. Brantner.
So we just wanted to run back through a few things before we get to the portion of our agenda where we will be putting the budget forward for you for a vote. So we wanted to just go back over for all of you and for anyone who's tuning in, some of the circumstances that have sort of led us to this very awkward place. So if you recall back to January, we started our budget talks with what I would consider a typical deficit, which I know that that's a really big number, but I think Tony at the time showed all of you what the past, I don't know how many years, 5 or 6 years have looked like when we start in January. And that January budget is really what we call a rollover budget. So we're basically taking everything that we have now and sort of rolling it forward. And then we work for the next several months to reconcile, are there things that we don't need anymore? Are there things that need to be added? And then we eventually get to the date of today where we would actually approve a budget. So one of the strange, extraordinary circumstances is that the governor always puts his aid run out in January, and that sort of gives us an idea of the revenue picture from the state aid side. And that aid run is usually considered the floor, meaning our aid won't be less than that. And so if we use that to build, we're using what we would consider a pretty conservative number. And that's pretty much been the case as long as I can remember. So what happened this year, as you all know, is that a global pandemic hit. And now what we're seeing is that that governor's run in January will likely be the ceiling, meaning that's the highest amount we would get. When we got our new aid run on April 1st, which generally provides more aid to schools than the governor's run, it actually provided less. And it was accompanied by a statement that the governor would be going through what he calls 4 look-back periods. And those look-back periods would be an opportunity for him to compare how state aid is trending, or how state revenue rather is trending in comparison to projections. And then he would make decisions about reductions to the state budget and then of course aid to schools accordingly. One of those look-back periods has already expired. It ended April 30th. And then there's 3 more to go, one ending at the end of June, one at the end of December, and one at the end of March. So if you recall, we originally were going to ask you to approve a budget last week at our May 11th meeting. And at the last minute, we asked if we could move that to this week, simply because we had received word that we would get that new aid run by Friday, May 15th, and that did not come to fruition. And the most recent talk is that the governor is potentially waiting to align a cut in aid to any federal monies that may come to assist state budgets and then accordingly some school budgets. The challenge for us is that we really can't wait anymore to adopt a budget because there are legal timelines that we have to meet rather. And so we're building a budget during a very challenging time. And we're asking, that the board go forth with considering a budget tonight.
So Michelle, I have a question. I know that typically in the state aid discussions between the governor and the assembly and the Senate, that there's a lot of give and take back and forth. These look back periods, is that an arbitrary time when just the governor can slash aid? Or is that a time when there's a little negotiation again about what that aid reduction might be?
I don't really know what the look back period discussions will look like. The way the budget was determined for April 1st was talked about as 3 men in the room. And I actually think Cuomo referred to it as 3 men in the room. So it could be that he's going to use that same approach, 3 men in a room with their financial people, and decisions will be made really based on how state revenue is looking and those projections. So I don't know how much give and take there really will be, but a good question. So we have been talking about ways that we can protect ourselves in the school district from, first of all, the current reduction that we've already seen in aid from that January run. So as I said, normally January is the floor, and it actually became the ceiling because April 1st, we received a pandemic adjustment in our aid. That was a reduction of $155,000. And right now, the assumption is that that will be backfilled by the Federal CARES Act. And we presume that there will be some process to claim that money. That being said, the advice we're getting is to provide protection in the event that for some reason that money doesn't come. So we came up with some cuts that we felt we could and should make right now to reduce the potential volatility. And the first is a part-time phys ed position. That phys ed position was actually a 0.78. It's an the person is in the elementary school currently. So the way portions of FTEs is determined is done by formula, and that formula is driven by minutes. So that's why it's a little bit strange. The other is that we were planning on a reduction of 2 teaching assistants. That reduction, because they largely serve special needs populations, it's contingent upon no changes in our student population that necessitate this support. So I've always said, if we have children that enter our district with particular needs, I'm thankful that they're here. I'm thankful that, we care and we can take care of their needs. But generally, that creates a little volatility in your budget that you just have to, be prepared for. So right now, this is what we're planning on, and time will tell. We also have a retirement of our K-6 science coordinator position. This was a position that we transitioned from someone who was doing direct science instruction at the elementary school 3 years ago to support our transition with the new science standards. And her decision to retire, it's always been the plan when she retired that this position would retire. And as a result, that's coming this year. And so that position will go away, and we'll complete the rest of that transition process as we go. The last 2 are really, at least somewhat as a result of our transportation efficiency study, an internal study that we did earlier this year. We have a half-time mechanic, and we also are going to condense 3 bus runs. So before I get into talking about the bus runs, I just want to note that any of the amounts listed next to these positions is a conglomeration of money. It's a lot of people look at this and think, oh my gosh, that's the salary of these folks. It's salary, but it's also anything that we have to pay relative to those positions in addition to salary. So it's an aggregate number, but we're giving you actual numbers that we can reduce from the expense side of the budget. So in terms of bus runs, I've had a few people come to me saying, hey, with the talk about social distancing and everything that's going on with the pandemic, is this a wise time for us to condense bus runs? And the bus run condensing is not going to have a massive impact on any one bus. It's dissipated through multiple buses when you dissolve routes. And I would tell you that honestly, if we have to greatly reduce the amount of students on a bus, the condensing of the bus runs or not doing that won't be the solution. The solution will have to be much more dramatic. And I hate to mention any possibilities because I think we have enough on our plates right now without creating further anxiety about what could happen, in the event that we aren't ready to open in the fall I think there's lots of time yet for us to get things taken care of relative to that, but I did want to address that concern that I've heard a couple times. So what are we doing right now in terms of looking forward? Because as I started telling you, this is a pretty volatile situation for all of us in the state of New York, not really knowing what's going to happen with our aid over the next close to 12 months. So we're still waiting for aid runs from the first look back period, and we have 3 more to come, as you know. We're still waiting to hear about any federal monies that will either fully backfill reductions or partially. The talk from the governor's office is that those cuts could be pretty significant. And again, my assumption is that the federal government may support us for at least part of that. And if the recession that happened back in 2008, 2009 and forward is any indication, the federal government can't and won't be able to backfill us forever. So we continue to look for ways over time that we can mitigate any negative impact. So right now, our concern is, having to make mid-year cuts and wanting to protect against that for 2 reasons. First and foremost, that creates real volatility for kids. When you have things going along in the school year and all of a sudden, you have to cut staff and, people that are working with kids aren't working with those kids anymore. It's incredibly disruptive. So one of the things that we're doing is that we're making sure any savings we have from the 1920 school year that we're currently in, we're trying to set aside because we know there's more cuts coming. We just haven't been told about them yet. The savings that we'll have from this year you might think it would be a dramatic amount of money in terms of our total budget, but it's not. And the reason for that is that buildings are not open to kids, but school is certainly open. And that means that the people that are employed here are still, which is the largest portion of our budget, are still being paid, to do the services that they need to do. I mean, we're still instructing, assessing, doing everything for kids. We're still feeding kids. We're transporting that food. I mean, we're a fully running operation just without a lot of people in our buildings. The other thing to note is that I'll talk later in the COVID-19 update towards the end of the agenda, a little bit about our budget vote, just to make sure that anyone listening, has another shot at sort of hearing the particulars. And I'll just note for you, the normal cost for a vote runs us about $3,500 to $4,000. And while we aren't sure what this virtual vote will be costing us, we are estimating at this point 15 to 20, and we'll keep you posted. So you can see there are things like this is just a small example of something during this crazy time that's actually costing us additional money. The other thing that I'll just put out there is that we are working on the potential of possibly having to make another cut to our administrative team. As you know, we cut a position a year ago, and I'm gearing up if we have a pretty grave situation to make a cut. So you're going to see later in the agenda that I've come up with a plan for sort of a 1-year carryover so that we can get some things shored up before that cut could possibly hit in 21, 22. So Tony has put together, these incredible spreadsheets that really show the detail. Where did we start and what's every single factor that's impacted the budget from that initial budget in January. And just to touch on a few, our retirement system numbers are not locked in when we start building the budget. So we have to put some conservative estimate numbers in there. And then we go through a period of refining. So while there's increases to our TRS contribution rate, we were more conservative in our initial budget run. And then we also, as you know, established a TRS reserve, and we anticipate using some of that reserve to mitigate the ebb and flow of that contribution rate. So that's represented there. In addition, the same thing goes for health insurance premium. We have to put an estimate number in there. And of course, you always are conservative on the expenditure and revenue side. And then at some point, those rates are locked in and we can refine our numbers. So this just shows refining that. Same with the tax levy limit calculation. we go through several iterations of that calculation until we determine what that revenue source looks like. We've also actually started doing some hiring for next year, and we've been able to refine what our projected salaries will be. We have some services that we will need in the coming year. One is letters training, which is a science of reading training. We're really trying to shore up having better approaches to reading instruction and going back to update the skills of ourselves and our teachers as it relates to the scientific underpinnings of reading instruction. And that is updated based on new brain research. So we started that last year, and we're hoping to continue it this summer with the next group of folks. As you know, we also had to appoint Jean Charlo as our data privacy and security officer. And that relates to a new law that we're required to comply with that is extremely technical and complex. So we're going to use a service through BOCES to support that work. As you know, we also saw a reduction in one of our special program services at BOCES. That was, again, just due to refining what kids need, what services for the coming year. And then some of the most recent things, you know, that with the market really struggling during the pandemic, we had projected some interest earnings of around $160,000, and we refined that by reducing it to 10. And we also are anticipating this pandemic adjustment. And then this is pretty much the list of the things that I went over. The one thing is that Batavia School for the Blind tuition that the students graduating, and we can take a reduction there. This reduction isn't quite the total amount that we thought. What we decided to do was that we would take all of our other reductions and additions, and then we would put a placeholder number in, knowing that we can bring this number up to 40,000. Tony's just really precise, and he wanted to make sure he had a zero here. So the spreadsheet worked out and we have a zero. But again, when we receive that aid adjustment that we know is coming, this number is quickly going to turn into 40,000.
Michelle, I have a question. So could you just go back to the previous screen?
Maybe. Yes, I can.
So $593,056 was the gap that we started with. And all of these black lines are reductions of that. The red indicates where we had to spend money. So there's some ebb and flow to get us to that next slide of zero.
Right. The red is showing a negative impact on the budget. Yep. And then
where we had to spend money. Everything else is a reduction. Reduction. The red is an expenditure.
Right. And then when you come over here, this is like a reduction.
Mhm.
It's a reduction, but in the wrong direction because it's on the revenue side. So it's not money we're spending.
But it's money we're not getting.
It's money we're not
It's a
getting.
loss of revenue,
Yeah.
which is an expense.
So it's a negative. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions, board members?
Nope, I'm good.
I just have a question. The way, I don't know if you guys are having the same issue, but the way my screen is laid out and I can see like me, Michelle, Kelly, I could see Jean in a minute ago, it was blocking that whole column of running numbers.
I think you can move
Okay.
that, yeah, that group, or you can shrink. You can
Alright.
shrink the.
Oh,
pic-
yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Okay,
Perfect. Sorry.
thank you.
Sure. Isn't this virtual meeting stuff exciting?
Any other questions for Tony or Michelle with regards to the budget, at least that we know of? Okay, Michelle, you have another presentation, 2020 project update.
Yes. Tony, this is not working. Okay. So I just, I know that we usually enjoy doing tours when we're doing projects, and unfortunately, we're not really in a touring kind of situation right now. So I'm bringing the tour to you. You know that the DMS project working on converting the HVAC system here is well underway, just in time as we were sort of patching together and duct taping together our system. So what you see here are just some photos of what's happening. So these are some units that will be installed, and also on the stage in the DMS auditorium, they've laid out all of these parts, and each one of these parts, this was not a complete collection, but each one of these parts represents something that will have to be installed in a classroom somewhere in this building. And this is the current state of the business office and district office. You can see that it's a bit of a mess. The ceilings were abated, and you can also see now the ductwork and the units starting to be installed in the ceiling. And there's more photos of ductwork and installation pipe, water pipe going into the ceiling as we're converting to a hot water system. And more piping. Now you can see insulation, that silver insulation being wrapped on some of the ductwork. So that's how you can tell we're progressing. And now you can even see, as of the last couple of days, they're starting to put up ceiling grid so that the ceilings can be reinstalled after, when the ductwork has been completed and the piping has been completed. So progress is really starting to be made, and there's more insulation wrap and more ceiling grid. You can also see areas, I don't know how much you paid attention when you visited the school, but we had all of those steam radiators. So there was one on the left-hand side underneath each one of those windows, and this is actually a picture of my office. And then you can see on the right-hand side, this is a picture of the area where Sue Larison sits to man the district office main desk. And there was also a radiator right under that window that no longer is there. And you can actually see in this old wood floor where the pipe cutoffs were. And again, this is over in Tony's office area on the right-hand side, another large radiator was removed. And then you can see that sign of the familiar blue painter's tape. And that means they're actually starting to paint and protecting our beautiful woodwork in those offices from getting some splatters on them. So this is all coming together. It seems like really quickly now. It's taken quite a long time to get to this stage. Whoops. So I just wanted you to be able to have a glimpse at a time when you couldn't as readily come in and visit. They also have started demolishing the boilers in the basement. In fact, Tony and I had some very exciting sounds today that reverberated throughout our office and the whole building. So there's very large, heavy, pipes being cut away as they break that into smaller pieces to be hauled out and the new boilers put in. So lots happening here, and I will keep you posted. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Any questions? All right, item next on the agenda, recognition.
Yeah, so I'd like to kick off with Jean Charlo, who has a recognition on the Seal of Biliteracy.
Yep. So I want to recognize all of the hard work and commitment of 8 of our seniors who recently achieved the Seal of Biliteracy. And in fact, one of those 8 achieved triliteracy. The seniors actually spent the entire year working and preparing their culminating projects. And those projects have to be presented completely in their target language. So there has been just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, reviewing, revising, and making sure those projects are to perfection. Originally, those students were going to present on April 22nd with our consortium of Seal of Biliteracy schools from across Central New York, but obviously they could not do that. Those students actually were so resilient in the fact that they figured out, all right, I can present on Zoom, and they did it on Zoom, and all of them did a fabulous job. So I want to just recognize all of them. Ellie Shaw, she achieved triliteracy in Spanish and Czech. Thomas Hoy achieved the biliteracy in Spanish. Caitlin Kemp achieved biliteracy in Spanish. Macy Shala achieved biliteracy in Spanish. Mary Seymour achieved biliteracy in Spanish. And Emily Falge achieved the Seal of Biliteracy in French. Amy Francisconi achieved the Seal of Biliteracy in French. And Elena Kaus achieved the Seal of Biliteracy in French. And Michelle actually was able to sit in on some of those presentations. Students are asked questions in the target language and have to respond in the target language. It was quite impressive.
Yeah, I even got to speak some Spanish. So I put it to use, thank God. Thanks, Jean. We're so excited for those students, and they really did an outstanding job. I also wanted to recognize the many staff members that were led by our high school principal, John Durkee, to deliver our beautiful senior signs to every single one of our seniors. It was a long and exhausting day. I know that a couple of our board members, Kelly and Margie, were able to join us, and it was worth every second of it. A huge thank you to our Marcellus Village Police, and especially to Officer Gates. He stayed with us all day, and honestly, I didn't realize how big of a procession we would be having. And I called them at the last minute, and they were right there for me and stuck with us all day to make sure that everybody was safe. We also had a lot of staff members, and we made it as special for kids as we could. Admittedly, we couldn't bring the parade part everywhere that we went, because there are just some areas of our district that you can't get cars in and out of very easily. But I do think everyone appreciated our efforts and that personal touch. Also, special recognition to one of our West Jenny neighbors, Bill Gambino of Action Sports Photography, for the use of the image on our signs. So thanks to all of them. Also, we've received some special food items from the Marcellus Rotary Club. They knew that we've been delivering meals to folks that need those meals, and they have been so generous in helping us in a partnership with Frito-Lay too, just so that people have some treats. They've also provided some fruit, and it's made those bags a little nicer. Also, our wonderful Catholic Church in Marcellus, St. Francis Xavier, provided some gift cards that we've been able to give to several families that are really struggling. So a huge thanks for the partnership of those folks while we're trying to provide food for those that need it. Also, you may have heard that there's been some strife with the College Board and advanced placement exams. I know some of you have had probably direct experience with your own children. It certainly has been a stressful time, and I just have to give thanks to Jean Charlo and to John Durkee, who have done a great job of partnering with some awesome parents in our community that are working together to try to make sure that we advocate for our kids that have been affected by some of the disruption that has been caused in these exams. So again, just another reason that Marcellus is a great place to live and work, that we really work together for kids. And that's all I have.
All right, item 5 on the agenda, residents' comments. Once again, thank you for joining us virtually for our Board of Education meeting this evening. You will have the opportunity to share comments under the resident comments section of our agenda, both now and then later in the agenda. You can do so by sending your comment to a special email address listed on your screen, comments@marcellusschools.org. We will display the current slide listing. We will display the current slide listing the email address unless we are presenting other information. Please send your comments at any time during the meeting. Once we arrive at the second resident comments section of the meeting, we will read any comments that we have received since then. Public expression at Board of Education meetings is encouraged, and a specific portion of the agenda shall provide for this privilege. In most instances, the board shall reserve judgment regarding questions and concerns that are brought to the board's attention at a board meeting, as it is typically, excuse me, as it is typically not prudent for the board to make instantaneous determinations. In addition, many issues that are brought to the board's attention do not require a formal determination by the board, but rather are more appropriately addressed by the superintendent or persons designated by the superintendent without further board action. This is in accordance with Board Policy 3220. At this time, it does not appear as though we have any comments. Item 6, business. 6.1, adoption of the 2020-2021 Marcella School Budget. Whereas the Marcella Central School District Board of Education has developed a budget for the operations of the district for the 2020-2021 school year. Whereas the annual budget hearing meeting is scheduled for May 26, 2020. Now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby adopts the budget developed in the amount of $37,844,964. Be it further resolved that the following proposition be placed before the voters on June 9th, 2020. Shall the Board of Education of the Marcellus Central School District be authorized to expend the sums set forth in the total amount of $37,844,964 for the 2020-2021 school year, and to levy the necessary tax therefore. May I have a motion?
This is Patty. I'll move.
Patty, thank you.
I'll second. Janine.
As we vote, I would ask that you please state your name so that we can make sure that we are able to tally everyone's vote. Any questions at this time about the budget?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tom, aye.
Margie, aye.
Janine, I.
Kelly, aye.
Michael,
Patty,
aye.
aye.
6.
Patty, aye. I don't know if you got me.
Yep. We have 6 aye. Any opposed? No abstains? Carried. Item 6.2, boys ice hockey combination with Syracuse City School District. Resolved that the Board of Education approves the athletic support combination between the Marcella Central School District and the Syracuse City School District for the 2020-2021 season with an approximate cost of $1,400 per athlete. May I have a motion?
Janine,
So
will
moved,
motion.
Tom.
I got Janine first, Tom second. Any questions or discussion? Has this been what we've paid in the past for this service?
Approximately.
Okay, just, I don't ever remember a cost associated with it, but.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Those in favor, state your name and how you vote, please.
Margie, aye.
Patty, aye.
Margie, Patty,
Kelly, aye.
Tom, aye.
Kelly and Tom.
Janine, I.
Michael, aye. Opposed? Carried. 6.3, girls ice hockey combination with Skinny Central School District. Resolved that the Board of Education approves the athletic support combination between the Marcella Central School District and Skinny Central School District for the 2020-2021 season with an approximate cost of $1,400 per athlete. May I have a motion?
Motion, Margie.
Yeah, this is Patty.
Margie. Second,
Patty.
Any discussion? Questions? So I have a question. I'm assuming that the girls, we partner with the girls with Skinny Atlas because Syracuse doesn't have a girls team, but the boys go with Syracuse boys.
The boys go with Syracuse boys. They were originally at one point intending to go with Skinny Atlas, and that partnership fell apart in the 11th hour. And at that time, Syracuse City was willing to take our boys, and we've stayed that way ever since with the boys team going there. If you recall, might have been 2 years ago, there was a little bit of talk about the potential of Skinny Atlas wanting to partner with us on the boys side, but it didn't really come to fruition.
And the girls have just remained with Skinny Atlas.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Margie, I.
Kelly, I.
Janine, I.
Tom, I.
Michael, I.
Patty's got to unmute.
Sorry, Patty, I said it, but y'all didn't hear me.
6 ayes. Any opposed? Carried. Item 6.4, varsity wrestling combination with Onondaga Central School District. Resolved that the Board of Education approves the athletic support combination agreement for the 2020-2021 season with Onondaga Central School District. Do I have a motion?
Motion, Kelly.
Kelly Rossiter, second.
Second,
Patty.
Margie.
Margie. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Kelly,
Patty,
I.
I.
Margie, I.
Janine, I.
Tom, I.
Michael, I. 6 ayes. Any opposed? Carried. 6.5, authorization to change the 2019-2020 school calendar, excuse me. Resolved that the Board of Education authorizes the superintendent of schools to alter the 2019-2020 school calendar to align with the 180-day rule in light of the COVID-19 school closure. May I have a motion?
Motion, Janine.
Janine, second.
Second, Margie.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Kelly, I.
Margie, I.
Patty, I.
Oh,
Tom,
Janine,
I.
I.
Michael, I. 6 ayes. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Item 7, personnel. Resolved that the following personnel items be approved. You can see items 7.1 through 7.7 on the agenda. I'm sorry, 7.1 through 7.8 on the agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved, Tom.
Second,
Second, Margie.
any question? Excuse me, questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Kelly, I.
Patty. Whoop.
Margie, I.
Janine,
Tom,
I.
I.
Michael, I.
Patty, I.
Anyone opposed? Carried. Item 8, consent agenda. Resolved that the consent agenda consisting of the following items be approved. You can see those in front of you, 8.1 through 8.5. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Tom. Patty, I'll move.
Tom on the motion, Patty on the second. Any questions or comments? Discussion. All those in favor?
Kelly, I.
Margie, I.
Patty,
Tom,
I.
I.
Janine, I.
Michael, I. 6 ayes. Any opposed? Carried. Item 9, information items, COVID-19 update.
So I just am trying to keep everyone updated on things we've been working on, all relative to how our lives have changed with COVID-19. So I'll run through this. We're keeping that COVID-19 page well updated. We've been putting out letters from the district every 2 weeks. I think John has been doing one every week. All the principals are doing a lot of communicating with their families. And I'm probably calling more than people care to hear from me. Nevertheless, here's the latest and greatest from the COVID-19 closure. As you know, our budget hearing and vote will be done virtually this year. That was by executive order of the governor. The budget hearing will take place Tuesday night due to Memorial Day at 7 p.m. So that's a week from tomorrow. Our budget vote will also be virtual. Ballots have to be received back here by 5 p.m. on 6/9. So no one can physically come here and vote. It's all done by absentee ballot. A postcard, our first mailing actually went out over the weekend. I know people in some area codes probably got it Saturday and some probably got it today. Board of Ed candidates are arranged on the ballot in alphabetical order, which is a departure from what's usual. We do have 4 candidates running. And they are Margie Venzel as an incumbent, Christine Shea, Mike Harvard, and Sean Eady. Absentee ballots are sent to all registered voters, and certainly if someone didn't receive a ballot and wants one or feels that they should have received one, they can be requested from the district. And all that information is included in the things that are going out to our community. So that's just a quick rundown on that budget vote. The next big thing we're working on is return of student personal items. As you can imagine, when you have less than 24 hours notice that you're closing school, people just sort of dropped and ran. So we have desks with books in them and personal items. We have lockers with personal items because I think everyone thought they'd be back in 2 weeks. So I put out an all call last week that 7th through 12th grade items have been collected and bagged, and they will be delivered this Wednesday between noon and 2. We'll be using our regular bus routes, and they've of course added in any households of walkers. And then K6 items will be delivered Thursday between 12 and 2. So hopefully that will work out famously. I'm going to be doing another all call just to remind people that we're coming. And I'm hoping that a lot of people can keep the bags because they're already labeled with the student's name, and we can use that when we collect items back, which is the next thing I'll talk about. At the end of the school year, families are going to be helping us by coming back to the campus like we did initially when we needed to distribute materials. And they'll be bringing us the electronic devices, so iPads, Chromebooks, and chargers, and any library books or textbooks they might have still at home. And then we're going to exchange that, depending on what grade children are in, with caps and gowns and yearbooks. So you give a bag and hopefully you'll get a bag back. Items that come to us, we're asking that they be bagged and labeled with the student name, grade, and the classroom teacher if it's a younger child. If for some reason folks don't come with a bag, we'll have bags and markers and we'll make it all work. Those items, and I'm going to post all these dates and times in the letter that will go out on Friday. We're going to set the first exchange to happen for seniors on June 11th between 9 and noon. That's so that our seniors can have their own special time and have their yearbooks first, which is a tradition that we've had here, and we'd like to try to keep that up. 7th through 11th grade will happen the next day, and then K6 will happen, 6/12 is a Friday, so K6 will happen on Monday. It's a lot of people coming and going from the campus, so we do need to spread it out a little bit. And certainly if there's issues with people not being able to make these times, we'll try to work with anybody that we can, but hopefully we have a pretty good plan. The one caveat is that we're waiting to hear from the yearbook company of our K3 for our KCH students. If we find out that yearbooks will not be in time for the 15th, we may change and have another date for our K3 families, but we'll communicate all of this out. We're continuing to work on end of year ceremonies and celebrations. Information is going to be posted to the website weekly, and we have a chart made. We were double checking it today with our first round of communications, and that chart should be posted by tomorrow. We are deep into plans for commencement for the class of 2020. We do have two options. One option is, you know, if we're still sort of in the phase that we're in now, where we have to limit, you know, people that are here. And I think it's a great plan in light of a really bad situation. And I'm hoping that we can have those details finished up and posted by the beginning of next week. There is another option we're also fleshing out. If by chance we are in phase 3 of reopening by the time that this could happen, and this would be a ceremony that would have to happen outside, which means we might have to have some flexible dates and times so that we can make that happen with any weather issues, because we all know it doesn't ever rain in central New York. So this one would be probably the preferred for our kids, but it's probably less likely just in light of the time we're living in. But we still want to have a plan in the event that we could pull it off. So a struggle that we're having that we could use help from any of our listeners. We've been battling with groups of kids gathering, and that's happening sort of in different ways. Some of it is just kids gathering on the grounds, you know, to play, and it's disconcerting to people that are just walking through campus or walking by, because we're supposed to be distancing. And so I sent a message out on the all call, and I'm again asking all of us to partner as a community. It's really hard for our kids. They want to play, they want to get some fresh air, but it's best that they not gather here on campus to do it. The other problem that we're having is groups coming from other school districts. And part of the reason for that is it's pretty impossible to close our campus, and even more impossible to close our stadium. There are districts around us that have, you know, 10 or 12-foot fences around their turf fields, and that's not the case here. So agile folk like our student athletes can probably get over those fences. I would not be one of those agile folk, but that's part of our challenge. And of course, I've tried to keep things open for people in our community that want to responsibly, you know, take a walk on the track. So we're doing our best. We've been working with our community, other schools, you know, that neighbor our community, talking with their administrators. And I have a meeting tomorrow with our police chief to just talk about, you know, how law enforcement can help us so that we can preserve the campus for the use it's intended right now, which is just taking a walk and not grouping up. So I want people to be aware that we're working on it, but we have some challenges. I don't have any perfect way to stop this from happening other than just continuing to message and working with law enforcement and district staff. So we will be a little bit more vigilant here too, to do checks throughout the day and at least early evening. As I said before, a letter will go out Friday afternoon with updates, so folks will get that either over the weekend or early in the week. So lots happening here, and we're continuing to do our very best.
Board members, any questions for Michelle with regards to information items? All right, next item on the agenda is the return to resident comments. So we did have one resident comment that I will now read. Do we know if there will be any meet the candidates information either through media, Zoom, newspaper, etc.? With so many running, it would be nice to hear what they have to say, what they hope to bring to the board. So candidate biographies will be available on the district website during the week of June 1st. So school board candidates that are running for the 2 open seats, their bios will be available on the district website beginning June 1st. That was the only comment that we had this evening. Item 11, to enter executive session. Be resolved that the meeting in public be adjourned and executive session be convened for the purpose of discussion of sale of real property. Time is 7:50. Do I have a motion?
Motion, Kelly.
Kelly? Second?
Second, Tom.
Tom? All those in favor?
Margie, I.
Patty. Tom, aye.
Janine, aye.
Kelly, I.
Michael, aye. 6 opposed. Carry.